President Biden held talks with the Prime Minister of Israel in Jerusalem. High on the agenda, security issues, including Iran's nuclear activities. Speaking at a press conference earlier, the president reaffirmed U.S. support to Israel and his desire to see a two-state solution with the Palestinians.
The best way to achieve that remains a two-state solution for two people, both of whom have deep and ancient roots in this land, living side by side in peace and security. Both states fully respecting the equal rights of their citizens, both people enjoying equal measures of freedom. And any more that takes us further from that outcome, I believe anything is detrimental to the long-term security of Israel.
NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell is in Jerusalem for us. Kelly, good to see you. So what are some of the biggest takeaways from this morning's meetings and press conference?
Well, good to be with you, Savannah. And this is clearly a chance for the president to again affirm that close bond with Israel. And in the question and answer part of the program, he was asked about Iran and he was asked about Saudi Arabia. And he made very clear that the U.S. and partners like Israel will not allow Iran to obtain nuclear weapons. And that means if force is necessary, that remains a viable option. That's not what anyone is looking for, but they want that message to be clear and to be spoken while the president is here in the Middle East. He also said that they have extended to Iran the way forward to return to that Iranian nuclear deal that President Trump, when he was in office, pulled the United States out of. That has been a long process, slow going, and it is still on the table. Also, the president said he would not wait forever for Iran's answer on that. So it's certainly ratcheting up pressure on Iran for them to engage with other world leaders, to recognize the world community won't let them have a nuclear weapon as they continue to build those capabilities, and to show that force is an option that partners like the U.S. would consider. On the issue of Saudi Arabia, there's a lot of anticipation about the next leg of the president's trip, and he was asked about the controversy at home about meeting with the Crown Prince, given the information the U.S. intelligence community has about his direct culpability in the death of Jamal Khashoggi. The president said that his views on human rights are well known, and he was asked if he was going to bring up Khashoggi, and he said, in effect, it isn't needed to be brought up because everyone knows where he stands on that. And that will be a question that will continue to be raised as we leave Israel and go to Saudi Arabia and other opportunities to address the president. Will he raise the name Khashoggi? Will he talk about it in private meetings, or is he leaving his position as enough? He also emphasized that going to Saudi Arabia is about attending a conference there, trying to de-emphasize the fact that he's going to the kingdom, even with all the controversy. Yes, there is a conference there. He will participate in it, but it is still very important that the American president is going to Saudi Arabia when candidate Joe Biden said they are a pariah state for their human rights. Savannah?
Absolutely. Now, also, Kelly, we know the president has a busy day of plans ahead today, including a meeting with former Prime Minister, now opposition leader, Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, it's safe to say Biden hasn't always had the best relationship with him, so what can we expect from that?
Well, they certainly had a very warm greeting at the airport, and one of the principles of when the U.S. comes to Israel is to meet not only with the current sitting officials, like in this case a caretaker Prime Minister Lapid, but also to meet across the spectrum with all of the different kind of representatives of the different political viewpoints. And in this case, Benjamin Netanyahu, who's very well known to Americans, was in office for a long time, and so that makes sense. And the intent behind that is that the U.S. is not president to prime minister in the relationship, but U.S. to all of Israel in its political views. And so that's a standard thing. It is something where clearly President Biden knows that the former prime minister had a very close relationship with Donald Trump, but that doesn't mean that President Biden can't have a working relationship here. We certainly heard him really emphasizing his personal feelings about being in Israel and his longstanding affection, affinity, and relationship with leaders here. So we'll be watching that for sure. But they really tried to emphasize that the page has been turned. The period of the Trump era is over. The president supports the Abraham Accords, which began during the Trump presidency, which is trying to have better relationships between Israel and Arab countries, normalizing relations. So that's a big part of this as well.
And Kelly, you mentioned the Trump administration being over. I mean, something else that had happened during that time was relations really hitting an all-time low with Palestinian officials, and the president is heading to the occupied West Bank tomorrow. How's the Biden administration planning to rebuild those ties?
Well, one of the things we've heard the president talk about is his support for a two-state solution, to have a Palestinian state alongside Israel and a Jewish state, to have peace and stability because of that. He acknowledges that is not something that is happening anytime soon, but we also heard the prime minister say that he too supports that. And so establishing contact directly with Mahmoud Abbas and to be able to have that conversation, something we've not seen in several years, is another way to try to bridge that gap and to show that the U.S. view is that a two-state solution has the best chance for long-term stability. At the same time, there are questions always about the Jewish settlements and some of the more aggressive positions Israel has taken, and trying to find that balance. So there's real diplomacy involved in this, and the president will make that trip, and he will do it without an Israeli representative with him. And there will also be a chance for them to make statements. So we'll be able to get a sense of how that meeting goes after they get together.
All right, Kelly O'Donnell, thank you so much.